Number 6, we're moving faster now. Number 6 is you need to craft a compelling narrative and build your personal brand. I'm going to cover this one really quickly, but here's the point. By the time you are 3 to 5 years in an organization, HR and your leaders already have a book on you, what Ellen Coleman, the former CEO of DuPont, calls the book, right? What it basically says is, who is this person? What are their skills? What are their strengths? What are their attributes? What's their character? What are they known for? So like my book in my early career would have been things like smart, fast, dynamic, flexible, strategic agility, driven, and it would have all boiled down to one brand, which is always delivers. And delivers the impossible. Whatever it is you can't do, that's why they send you to Asia, Russia, whatever else nobody else can or will do, let's put Perry on it. That was what my brand was. Now, the downside of that brand was that I was not always the most popular person in the office or whatever, right? Because I was so driven and so fierce about delivering this thing that not everybody wanted to work on my team, right? So once I understood that was my book, what I realized is, and I went to my boss and I went to HR and I asked for feedback, 360 feedback. That's kind of another way to get your book, right? Is to ask for 360 feedback. It can be informal even. What I learned was, okay, so what the CEO summarized as, not everybody wants to work with you, but our best people want to work with you, right? Now, that brand is good in a consulting firm. That brand is not enough in a corporation, because in a corporation, you have to work with a ton of people that don't turn over all that often, that you don't get to pick very often. And so what I learned as I got older was, once I understood that was my book, I really figured out, how am I going to keep the she delivers brand, but add to that, and she's somebody you want to have on your team. And thank God for kids and marriage and everything else, because that's what really added humility to my life, when I really realized I was not nearly as smart and brilliant as I thought I was, and that there was a lot more to life than work, right? But what you've got to figure out is, what is your brand? And then you have to be able to, whatever audience you're talking to, you have to be able to create a compelling narrative that points all these moves together. So for women, sometimes that means women more often than men, but it can be men too. It can be, I went sideways, I stepped out, I stepped down, I went, I don't care where you went, right? I have 2 things to say about this. One, never fully step out of the job market. Don't, okay? If you can possibly avoid it. You'll see I'm publishing a piece later this week about moms with special needs kids, right? And even for them, what I say is, try not to fully step out. That doesn't mean you can't go back, sideways, down. Oh, absolutely. Find a whole new type of employment, like consulting, all good. Just try to do unpaid work, do volunteer work. Any of that counts. The point is, keep your skills and your network active to a degree, okay? Very, very important. Men tend to do this well. Women tend to do this badly. The minute we have kids, spouses, anything else, we stop networking as much, we stop going to evening events, we just kind of say, okay, I'm already exhausted, I'm already too busy, this is what I do, right? You need to keep doing that. And you need to therefore be able to create this narrative that goes throughout your career, up, down, sideways, different employers. I've worked in all 4 sectors. I can't tell you how many people constantly tell me, it's like, okay, but you're a corporate person. I'm like, no, I love business, but I've run a foundation and I've worked in nonprofits and whatever, and they're like, okay, but then you worked for academia. And I'm like, no, I was a professor, an adjunct professor, but I'm not an academic. I don't consider myself an academic, right? So there's all sorts of narratives you could create about my background. I need to write that narrative when I meet somebody. I need to tell them who I am, and I need to make sense of all these really crazy pieces of my life that come together, okay? All right. And by the way, if you don't do the narrative, they're doing it for you. All right, you've all heard this, right, about branding. It's like your brand exists one way or the other. Either you're managing it or somebody else is. My view is, unless you have a fabulous friend like Vicky who can manage your brand, the truth is you need to be managing your brand, right? Last one, number 7. Okay, and this one speaks to the question you had raised. Yes, I'm sorry.
That's right. We've got a quick question on the line about number 6, which is sort of, how do you change your brand when HR already has the book on it?
That is such a great question. Thank you, and I'm sorry I didn't stop. So yeah, the answer is, it ain't easy, right? It's not that easy. Once an entire and sometimes you actually have to change organizations, but that is a last resort, right? If you know what your brand is, and you know, take my example, right? That I was too pushy, too driven, too hard, you know. I was not the person that everybody picked to go have a beer with after work because I was too intense, right? And yes, I've heard this many times, too intense, right? Okay, fine. And I haven't gotten less intense, let's be clear, I'm sorry. That's not what I've done. What I have learned is how to style flex and how to help people understand that while I'm really intense about my work and my way of going in life is intense, right? I don't believe that life is a spectator sport. I just don't. I can't be that person, right? I would like to say I am not, okay? But that doesn't mean that I'm trying to run anybody else over. And it doesn't mean, and so what I did was I actually told my team, I said, I recognize that I take up too much airtime. I am the first to talk. I am, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, so here's what I'm going to commit to you. I can't be a different person, but I can do some things differently. And here's what I'm going to commit to, right? I'm going to always wait to give my opinion last on a topic. I'm going to make sure that I never take up more than 10% of the airtime, whatever. I gave them the list of things, right? And I told HR about it. I told my team about it. I told my boss about it. And then I gave them all permission to say, I don't care what level you are. If I'm not doing these things that I am committing to you to do, because I want to be a better colleague. I don't want you not to want to have a beer with me, right? I am not trying not to be popular, right? So if you see me doing this, I give you my permission to challenge me and just raise your hand and say, hey, Perry, I thought we were going to go first. Or can I go first, right? And the first couple times, I didn't get it right? But when they raised and they challenged, and then they saw that I said, oh, you are right, I am so sorry. Okay, I had stickums. I had stickums all over my computer. Breathe, be quiet, right? It's like, let somebody else go first, right? I would walk in, I had a little book like that. You laugh, but it works. I had a little book like that. Sometimes I write it right on my hand, right here, right? Or right here, because then I could look at it and nobody could really tell that I was looking at it. Same reason I wear my watch on this side, which is very good for consulting, I will tell you. Okay, but at any rate, so I had notes everywhere, whatever. But that was how, because it was so overt and it actually really got their attention. And then they saw that I was trying. Well, you know something? Just by the act of trying, even though I didn't succeed all the time, and even though I am still intense and fast and whatever, they said, oh my God, well, she's just human. And it was like suddenly, okay, now I'm a human, and now it's okay that, back to that thing, I'm not perfect, and that I can ask for help, right? So that's how I fixed my brand. I still deliver, I'm still intense, whatever, but people know that I'm very human and that I want everybody on the team to feel awesome about who they are and what they contribute, even if they're really, really different than I am. In fact, especially if they're really different than I am, because I need people that are not like me. Can you imagine a team of 10 Perrys, right? It would be terrifying, right? And it wouldn't even be productive, right? You need people who aren't like you. You need to think, what are your strengths? Play to your strengths, but then build a team around you that is different and that can make up for the things you're not really good at, right? So I get slow, thoughtful people. And when I say slow, I mean that in the most positive sense, that they are very thoughtful, they're very considered, they are more concerned about risk, because then between the two of us, we're gonna make a great decision. I'm just gonna leap off the cliff and it's like, whoa, right? They're gonna say, maybe we should think about these 3 things first, right? You gotta respect them, but that's what I do. Okay, hopefully that answered the question about how do you change your book.